Community Coat and Blanket Drive. All you have to do is drop off new or clean, gently used winter coats and blankets in the KBLA lobby during business hours. Now through December 20th, all of the coats and blankets will be donated to unsheltered individuals and families experiencing houselessness. Simply bring your donation to 4434 Crenshaw Boulevard in Los Angeles, near Vernon Avenue, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays. That's 4434 Crenshaw in historic Leimert Park. During the holidays and every day, let's remember, we keep us safe. We keep us warm. We are the safety net, and together we can cover the unsheltered. Get caught up in the spirit of the season, the spirit of love. Make a difference with your friends at KBLA Talk 1580.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit TheTavisSmileyShow.com. That's TheTavisSmileyShow.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, what makes you an anti-Semite, anti-Semitic, or guilty of trading in anti-Semitism? Is all criticism of Israel anti-Semitic? We'll be joined live in studio by Steve Leader, the senior rabbi of one of America's largest synagogues, the Wilshire Boulevard Temple here in Los Angeles, for a dialogue about why so many fellow citizens are being labeled and canceled for being so-called anti-Semitic. Indeed, just yesterday, amidst this Israel-Hamas conflict, Academy Award-winning actress and human rights activist Susan Sarandon, you know Susan Sarandon, Thelma and Louise, she was dropped by her talent agency, UTA, for comments that they deemed anti-Jewish at a pro-Palestine rally in New York City. We will unpack all of that in hour two today with Rabbi Steve Leader. In our third hour, a career conversation with actress and comedian Tiffany Haddish. Tiffany is once again serving up turkey dinners with a side of laughs tomorrow at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood. We'll talk to her today, though, in hour three. But in this first hour today,
from Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago. Vice President Lyndon Johnson has left the hospital in Dallas, but we do not know to where he has proceeded. Presumably, he will be taking the oath of office shortly and become the 36th President of the United States.
That was veteran CBS newsman Walter Cronkite announcing to the nation 60 years ago today that President John F. Kennedy had been shot and killed in Dallas, Texas. Because this is radio, you couldn't see that clip. You obviously heard it, but hopefully you heard Walter Cronkite. It's a classic clip of him choking up and almost breaking out in tears as he was reading the announcement. And as a newsman, that was not his way. But having to make that announcement to the nation choked him up. And you could hear that sort of pregnant pause, if you will. in his voice in the clip we just played for you. In this hour, two conversations. On the B side of this hour, we'll be joined by Boston University professor and author of the book JFK and His Enemies, Thomas J. Whalen. But we commence today's show with award-winning investigative journalist, talk show host, best-selling author, and more, Geraldo Rivera. Geraldo, good to have you back, my friend. How are you, sir?
Morning, Tavis. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Good to hear your voice once again. In his 1975 late-night talk show, Good Night America, Geraldo hosted an episode entitled Who Really Killed JFK? So JFK killed 1963, 60 years ago today, but new evidence continues to come out after that assassination. And in 1975, again, on his late-night talk show, Good Night America, Geraldo, featured an episode called Who Really Killed JFK? I want to play two clips from G's show that night before we commence our conversation with him. Miles, play the first clip.
It's become very chic among television producers to put a disclaimer at the head of any film. The film you're about to see might be shocking, it might be horrifying, you might not want your kids to watch it. And I think the unfortunate net effect of that is to make more people watch it. Well, I'm telling you right straight out that if you are at all sensitive, if you're at all queasy, then don't watch this film. Just put on the late night movie because this is very heavy. It's the film shot by the Dallas dress manufacturer Abraham Zapruder, and it's the execution of President Kennedy.
So Geraldo breaks this footage, known as the Zapruder film, to the nation in 1975 on his late-night show, Good Night America. That's the first clip. The second clip I want to play is Geraldo introducing one of his special guests that night, who was seated alongside another special guest named Dick Gregory. I'll let Geraldo tell the story of how he and Dick Gregory got together. But here's clip number 2 of Geraldo introducing his other guest that evening.
I want to introduce another guest we have, Robert Grodin, who was celebrating his 18th birthday on the 22nd of November in 1963. He was profoundly touched by the president's death, and he desperately wanted to understand how it could have happened. For 2 years, he, like most Americans, believed in the official version, the Warren Commission version of what happened, but the day he first saw that 8mm Zapruder film, that amateur film that was made, that was the day he stopped believing. Robert, welcome, and I wish you could set up the Zapruder film a bit for us, and we'll get right into it.
Okay. Abraham Zapruder was a Dallas dress manufacturer, and it was pure accident that he brought the camera with him that day. He almost didn't. And he was looking for a good vantage point, and he picked a point on Elm Street in Dealey Plaza in downtown Dallas. As the motorcade passed in front of him, he got what is, frame for frame, the most valuable historical document of all time.
Geraldo's vast and amazing body of work never ceases to amaze me, but now that we've set the frame for this conversation 60 years after the assassination of JFK, when we come forward, we'll commence our conversation with Geraldo Rivera.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
IQ. This the intro to the all-electric Cadillac, perfection like Zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop. Haiku. This is what I do. Daddy fat intellect since 92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Coming 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shawty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit. You hear me? You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Feel it, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bustin', truckin'. Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com.
Available late 2024. GM estimate 450-mile range. On a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection. Consistent with the CHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambience, temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
Ask any former youth in foster care what they missed most while growing up, and they will most likely answer, someone to show me unconditional love. Now, isn't that something we all wished we could experience? Here in Los Angeles, up to 40% of homeless youth on our streets identify as LGBTQ+. The most prevalent reason for homelessness among this population is the rejection they've experienced from their own families. The LA County Department of Children and Family Services and Raise a Child are searching for safe, nurturing, and affirming foster parents within our community willing to stand up and serve all children and youth in foster care, especially LGBTQ youth. Learn the many benefits to becoming a foster parent. Attend a free Raise a Child virtual or in-person informational event to learn more. RSVP now at raiseachild.org. That's raiseachild.org. And thank you.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So, let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California, once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at a gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event, or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
All right, Geraldo Rivera, now that I've set the frame, take me back to 1975 and tell me about that show.
Well, I take you back first to, if I can, Tavis, great talking to you as always. Take you back first to 1963. Sure. When it happened. I was a young transfer student at the University of Arizona. I was in the big student center, the student union, and there was a TV there, and everybody in that crowded room was around that TV watching the 35th president of the United States get killed right in front of us. It was a staggering blow. Any kind of idealistic notions we had, everything was put on pause. Very dark, very suspicious, very eerie, awful tragedy. And then jump forward to 1975. Through my friendship with Dick Gregory, the comedian and musician and conspiracy theorist, I got my hands on a very valuable, what Dick Gregory calls, or Robert Groden, his associate, calls the most important investigative document in the history of the modern world, the 8mm film that shows the actual murder of John Kennedy right there, right in front of you, undeniably. You see the three shots that were fired from where is in great debate. But three shots, first one missing, second one hitting John Kennedy in the throat, and going on after it hits him in the throat to impact Governor Connolly of Texas, who was sitting in front of him in the open-air limousine. And then the third shot is the shot that causes gasps from the audience. Certainly when I saw it, I could not believe it. The third shot is the one that took off the head of John Kennedy, basically blew off half his head. It was, and Jackie Kennedy, the First Lady of the United States, sitting alongside him in that open vehicle. You could see her react first to shock. What the hell is this? And then she realizes that someone has just killed her husband. It's quite stunning, as you now know.
Yeah. You referred to our friend, your friend and my friend, I miss him dearly, Dick Gregory, as a conspiracy theorist. And I think that's accurate. There's no question about the fact that Dick had a different way of seeing things. And yet, I don't think one has to be a conspiracy theorist to not buy what the Warren Commission told us. I've studied this thing over the years. You've talked about it more than I have. So you were a student, of course, in 63 when this happened, but as years went by and as you got exposed to this Zapruder film and broke this to the nation in 1975 on your late night show, did you start to have doubts about what you'd been told by the Warren Commission?
Well, Dick had prepared me, but I see it live with the audience that night on the broadcast. And it was so absolutely gut-wrenching. It's heartbreaking to see it all happen in real time. And, you know, you have to now set the stage in 1975. What has happened by then? Vietnam has been fought and lost. Watergate has happened. Nixon has resigned. Pentagon Papers published. The whole nation is suspicious of everything involving intelligence and the CIA and the FBI and the Secret Services and all the rest of it. So we're very, very skeptical America in 1975 when I got the footage from Dick and Bob Gordon. So to put it on where we already suspect the government is involved in, all kinds of things involving Castro and the mob and a lot of other, shadowy aspects of life. And then to see this and say, wait a second, that's not what we were told by the official commission. What we were told by the official commission is 3 shots, single shooter, from behind, case closed. But when you see the footage, it opens up, all kinds of grim and terrible possibilities. If there was a second shooter, if it was really a conspiracy, was it a coup attempt? What was it? Was it Castro getting back at us for the Bay of Pigs? Was it the mob getting back at Kennedy for romancing Marilyn Monroe, who is also the girlfriend purportedly of one of the mobsters? It's very layered. It's very troubling. I could give you the evolution of my thinking on it, but when you hear it and when you see his head seemingly go backward, in other words, in response to the shot from the front, that's what it looks like. It looks like a shot from the front, at least one of them. And you say, how can you be shot from the front and from the back and still have only one shooter? So it was very, very troubling to me, and it forced me with my team to read the entire Warren Commission line by line, go over every piece of available video, and then of course the Zapruder footage. The dressmaker's 8mm film was not seen by the public because it was copyrighted immediately. Zapruder sold it to Time Life. And they sat on it. I don't know what they were going to do. They keep it in the presidential library or the National Archives, but they were refusing to broadcast it. And I said, listen, I've got it. I'm going to broadcast it, come what may. ABC said, you may air it, but you have to know you have to sign a release because if we get sued, you're on the hook, not us. So I had to sign away my life, basically, and I aired it anyway because my theory then and now and for all time is that that footage is not anybody's property. That belongs to the American people.
Geraldo is a courageous guy. He just had a big birthday this summer. His birthday, in fact, is on July 4th. And he had a big 80th birthday to which I attended and had a chance to offer a toast to him at that party. I love this guy dearly. And I've known him for almost 30 of those 80 years. I haven't known him most of his life, but I've known him for almost 30. As you hear me say every time he comes on my program, he's the guy that put me on television first, national TV. So if you love me, thank Geraldo. If you loathe me, blame Geraldo. But he put me out there. But I've known you for almost 3 decades, man. And I just heard something a moment ago that I've never heard before. And this is in some ways, I think, an inside baseball question. But if the audience is as curious as I am, they'll want to hear the answer as well. So I've never known anybody to be more prepared than you. When you come on any program, you study, you prepare. Even in this conversation, you're just breaking stuff down that I hadn't thought about or considered. You always are prepared for anything you step into. And you apparently chose on that night, based on what you said earlier, to not watch this footage prior to broadcasting it live. You saw it live with the audience. What was that decision about? I'm just curious about that.
Well, I wanted to respond to it in as natural a way as possible. I trusted Dick Gregory. I mean, he and I had a pretty good friendship based on on mutual trust and respect. And, he told me, and I said, oh, my God, okay, let's fasten your seatbelts. And I thought if I saw it first and if I knew the ending, it's even like if I had opened Al Capone's vault before we went on TV. To go from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Yeah, perhaps you should have in the latter case, but I digress on that point.
Yeah, right.
I digress on that. There are many who are not around, of course, 60 years ago today when JFK was shot, but there are many, obviously, who were, including yourself. And those who were around, I've heard many people refer to that moment as the day America lost its innocence. Is that putting too much on it? How does that statement hit you? You've heard it before many times, obviously.
Well, yeah, you had obviously the civil rights movement was really beginning to really percolate, but it was still relatively in the hearts and minds and lives of a minority of the majority of Americans. This situation was so gut wrenching. I mean, it's hard to describe how important this guy was to America at that point, the 35th president. I mean, they were Camelot. They were everything beautiful in life. They were elegant. They were inclusive. They were liberal. He was a war hero. She was the most beautiful woman on earth. And to put it all together in something so mundane, taking a ride in an open-air car down the street in America, so traditional, the president waving, Jackie waving. I mean, it was a visit to Dallas, Texas by the president, but it was really the beginning of his re-election campaign. Yeah. And to see it happen there and to see it nipped in the bud, see how a handful of people can alter the course of history. It was quite eye-opening.
I asked you about 1975 minutes ago, and you said, let me go to 1963 first, and I'm glad you did, to tell the story of where you were the day this happened as a student in Arizona. But just very quickly, I want to just again, focus even more so on this frame, just to remind people, because you did an excellent job earlier of explaining where we were in the country by the time we got to 1975. But let me again go back to 1963 and just point out three things so people just follow the arc of history, which I find fascinating as a student of history, as are you. So Kennedy is, let me go back to August 28. You mentioned the Civil Rights Movement. That's what made me think about this. The March on Washington takes place August 28, 1963. After the event concludes, most of you know, they get invited by JFK to the White House. At least the men did, Dr. King and the others. Famous photo of them in the White House. JFK was scared what this march was going to turn into. National Guard all over D.C., peaceful, no arrest. He was wrong about that. He watched it on television inside the White House. But they go to the White House to see JFK, Dr. King, and the entourage after the event. That's August 28, 1963. Just a few weeks later, on September 15, 1963, you get the bombing of the 16th Street Church in Birmingham, or Bombingham as they called it then, where they killed those 4 little girls. And then a few weeks later, November 22nd, 63, JFK is assassinated. Just wanted to put a frame around that. The march is on 28th of August. The girls are killed even after that march. For all that we thought that march did, they killed these girls in this church in September on the 15th, same year. And then a couple months later, November 22nd, JFK is killed in Dallas. Just fascinating, I think, and I want to just share that with you right quick. I got about 4 minutes left with Geraldo. Let me ask 2 things right quick. One, what do you think that did, that Warren Commission and all the questions that are still being raised 60 years later, how did that change people's attitudes about trusting the government? And of course, to your point, we just gone through and lost Vietnam. How would you frame that? What would you say about the notion of government trust in that particular era?
Oh, I think it was a profound blow to the credibility of the government. It was everybody became a so-called conspiracy theorist. Everybody was talking about it as if it had just happened, and as if it had just happened to your best friend. It was, it is impossible to minimize what a body blow it was to to the traditional relationship, excuse me, between citizen and government. And, you know, I think that it is incumbent in terms of responsibility that I say I was convinced that night, sitting there with Bob Groden and Dick Gregory, that what I was seeing was the exposing of the lies being told me and the American people by our government.
Yeah.
I've come over the many years since. It's been, 50 years more or less since I aired that footage. 48, is it? I now believe that if indeed it was something other than we were told that it was, a single shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald, firing 3 shots from behind, that somebody would have proven that by now. So many good investigators have probed this by now. So many, skeptics have gone through it. The Secret Service people involved have written books. Everybody's written a book. The doctor at Parkland Hospital, everybody's written books about it. If indeed it was not as what we were told it was, then I believe somebody would have proven it, and no one has, to my satisfaction, at all come close to the strength of the official version that it was indeed this schmucky communist, angry over what we did with Castro in Cuba. He had just lived in Moscow. Lee Harvey Oswald married a Russian woman. It was just as Jacqueline Kennedy said, a silly little communist who did this. And then he was killed by Jack Ruby on national television 2 days later. The guy that, so that, what was that? So, I mean, there's so many reasons to be suspicious. Yeah. But I just think that if we had, if there was anything, somebody would have come forward by now.
You, my friend, have had an amazing career. And it never, as I said earlier, never ceases to amaze me, all the national stories, international stories that you have broken in this amazing career of yours that is no longer on Fox News, but ain't over yet. I suspect, knowing you as I do, we'll be hearing news pretty soon about the next network you're headed to continue your work, because his energy is as fierce as ever. Geraldo, thank you for the time once again. I love you. Talk to you soon, my friend.
My pleasure.
All the best to you. More of Tavis Smiley. We'll continue this conversation about the assassination of JFK 60 years ago today. We'll be joined by Boston University professor and author of the book, JFK and His Enemies, Thomas J. Whalen, on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth. Speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between 2 turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
I'm Tyreek Wynn. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Civil rights activist Reverend Al Sharpton delivered the eulogy at Monday's funeral for a 37-year-old black man run over and killed back in March by a Jackson, Mississippi police officer. Dexter Wade's body was buried in a pauper's grave, his family not having been notified. Sharpton, who was asked by the family to deliver the eulogy, was joined by attorney Benjamin Crump, who has long described the secrecy surrounding Wade's death and burial as a cop-killing cover-up. The White House has launched accounts on social media platform Threads for President Biden and Vice President Harris. In a statement, the White House officials said that they are committed to meeting the people where they are, adding that Threads is an extra way to communicate with the American people. Biden wrote in his first post Monday that people were hearing from him on a new platform but his message hasn't changed. That's the latest. I'm Tyreek Wayne on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Staples Holiday Deals mean amazing savings for the holiday season. Right now, save 50% on custom holiday cards and invitations, as well as custom photo gifts like mugs and calendars. Offer ends 12/16. Visit staples.com/print for more details. Have yourself a merry little holiday deal at Staples.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers win their third straight. They cruised past Utah to win by 32 at Crypto.com. The Lakers had 35 assists. Efficient game for LeBron, 17 points, 9 assists in 24 minutes. LeBron sat out the fourth quarter. The Lakers needed a blowout like this to give LeBron some valuable rest. He played 40 minutes in Sunday's win over Houston. The Lakers would need a well-rested LeBron tonight. They play Dallas at Crypto, 7 o'clock tip. The Clippers are back in action tonight. They're in San Antonio to play the Spurs again. The Clippers beat the Spurs by 25 on Monday. The top 4 schools in the college football playoff rankings: Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and Washington. If the regular season ended today, these 4 schools would be in the playoffs to battle for the national championship. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Want to save big on custom faux wood blinds, shutters, cellular shades, and more? Shop Blindster today and save up to 50% over comparable blinds from brick and mortar stores. Get custom blinds at low prices and free shipping at Blindster.com.
When you're young, life is full of choices. Don't let opioids like highly addictive and deadly fentanyl take away your life with just one wrong pill. Addiction is a disease that can affect anyone at any age. But there is a choice to get help for this disease. Find medically proven treatment options, including virtual, at choosemat.org.
Do you have both Medi-Cal and Medicare?
If so, the new LA Care plan called Medicare Plus can help you get the most out of your health plan for $0.
LA Care provides personalized service to Angelinos like us.
Plus, it gives us access to doctors and specialists across Los Angeles County.
For zero cost, we get access to full benefits.
From vision coverage,
in-home support services,
to prescription drug coverage,
and a quarterly over-the-counter allowance.
Plus personal equipment,
meal programs,
a gym membership,
and so much more.
For more than 25 years,
LA Care has provided Angelinos with access to quality health care at an affordable cost.
For our families,
our seniors,
our community,
it's a plus.
It's a plus
for all of us.
It's here. Black Friday week is live at Target. Save up to 50% on select tech and video games. Plus, save up to 40% on select small appliances, up to 45% on floor care, and so much more. And get free shipping when you spend $35 or use your red card at Target.com. Hurry! These Black Friday deals end Saturday. Get low prices and great Black Friday deals. Only at Target. Exclusions apply.
Love like this before.
Made fresh daily in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
We continue our conversation now, our tribute, our commemoration on this day, 60 years after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas. Just had a wonderful conversation with Geraldo Rivera, who broke the Zapruder film. The nation saw that Zapruder film, now infamous, all these years later. But Geraldo is the journalist who got his hands on that film and broadcast it first to the nation, and I was happy to have him on the program today to hear his reflections all these years later. We continue now with Thomas J. Whalen, who is a professor of social science at Boston University. Whenever I think of BU, I always think of course, my hero, Dr. King, the person I regard as the greatest American this country's ever produced, got his Ph.D. at Boston University. So I always think of him whenever I think of BU. Professor Whalen's book, though, is called JFK and His Enemies, A Portrait of Power. And I'm delighted to have Professor Whalen on this program. How are you today, sir?
Very good. How about you?
If I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I am doing well, and I'm delighted to have you on this program. Let me just jump right in and make the most of these few moments that we have. Let me start with a couple of broad questions, and we'll narrow our way into your text. What do you make? And I'm not naive, of course, in asking this. It is JFK and Jackie O and all of that, Camelot and all of that. But what do you make of the enduring curiosity, the enduring and insatiable appetite for all things JFK 60 years after his assassination?
Well, you have to understand the context. I mean, he was president at a time when the United States was at the zenith of its power, militarily, economically, culturally, and will never quite regain that position in the world, given, the competitors that we now see, like in China and so forth. But he also was young and progressive, and he spoke with incredible eloquence about what problems our nation faced and his solutions on how to address them moving forward in the future. And we've never had a modern president quite able to do that. And, the fact that his life was snuffed out so early is that unfinished business that has always intrigued Americans. How could we be better off today if JFK had lived? Would we have avoided the Vietnam War? Would we have avoided Watergate? And it was a time when you had a president in the White House who, people looked up to, not just here in the United States, but around the world. You cannot say that at all today.
Yeah. I wondered to what extent his premature death helped to lionize him. Clearly, his assassination 60 years ago today is part and parcel, a major part, in fact, of his iconography. And there are ways in which, whether you're talking JFK or RFK or MLK or any other K, there are ways in which their murders, their assassinations at such young ages lead to, again, a kind of iconography that others will never experience. How do you read that?
Well, they're kind of like frozen in historic amber, right? We see them at their best, at their most vigorous. And also, there's an old saying that, heroes know when to die, right? And, had he lived, given the vexing problems, particularly the civil rights movement in the 1960s, Vietnam and Cold War struggles, would he have been able to effectively address them? Lincoln died, for example, before, he could tackle really how to reconstruct the old Confederate South. And would he have made moves that would have, tarnished his long-term historical reputation? So it's that intriguing what if that, keeps us so interested and obsessed, really, with that administration.
Yep. To your point of being interested and obsessed, I am always amazed. I've written a book about Dr. King, as this audience knows, and I'm always amazed by all the books written about MLK, say nothing of all the books written about RFK, to say nothing about all of the books written about JFK. There have been so many, and there'll be more to come. I'm just curious, before I get into the book, why you decided to write yet another book about JFK and what you hope to accomplish with your text, JFK and His Enemies, A Portrait of Power.
Well, I had done an earlier book called Kennedy versus Lodge, the Massachusetts Senate race in 1952 that kind of created the Kennedy dynasty.
Right.
Destroying another dynasty. But this one, I wanted JFK and His Enemies. I wanted to see JFK and his administration through the eyes of his, rivals on the political scene. How did they perceive it in his interaction with them, what was accomplished or what was not? And I think it's an interesting dynamic that, no other historians have really tackled up to that point.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you did it because there's a lot of fascinating stuff inside of it. And I want to, again, make the most of the few moments that we have. Let me go to one of these enemies. And there are a number of them, of course, you write about. You just mentioned Henry Lodge a moment ago. But I want to come specifically to Lyndon Baines Johnson. And I want to come to him because nobody, you wrote the book and you lay this out. Mm-hmm. But nobody ever thinks of LBJ as an enemy of JFK, in part because we know that LBJ was his vice president. In part because we know that LBJ, of course, became president when JFK was assassinated 60 years ago in Dallas. He continued the work, and he made a name for himself, no question about it. The Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, and the work he did on so many other fronts. No doubt about the fact that he's iconic in his own right. But nobody ever thinks of LBJ as an enemy of JFK. Here you come and you lay this out in the book, Professor Whalen. So talk about that, if you will.
Well, I think that's what makes JFK so interesting and really in some ways great because, they were enemies, political enemies, because they were going for the same prize, the presidency in 1960. But JFK had the insight and one could say the political calculation to make him his friend, make him an asset to his administration, because he realized if he's going to win in 1960 a close election against Richard Nixon, the Republican nominee, he needed the support of the old Democratic South, mm-hmm. to which Lyndon Johnson was the representative of. And so, but up to that point, they were hammer and tongs against one another. I mean, Lyndon Johnson had absolute contempt for JFK, because in the Senate, JFK was a junior backbencher, and he hadn't really passed any major legislation with his name on it. And, the idea that he's running for president, Johnson called him, the boy. I mean, that was, his opinion of JFK. But JFK, he had a certain grudging respect for LBJ, and he knew when to put aside his own kind of personal misgivings about him and use him for his own political benefit. And that makes a great politician because, FDR was like that as well. He had a lot of enemies, probably more enemies than JFK did, but he knew how to manipulate them, how to use them for his own purposes, how to co-opt them. Abraham Lincoln was another guy. He had a cabinet of rivals. Mm-hmm. And JFK, in many ways, in his own administration, not just Lyndon Johnson, he used Republicans. Henry Cabot Lodge, he ends up ambassador to South Vietnam. This is the same guy that he defeated for the Senate back in 1952. So JFK, I think, was a lot more canny, kind of cunning than people give him credit for.
Yep. When we come forward, I want to just imagine, actually we can't, but I'm going to try anyway, to imagine how our politics would be today if we had presidential administrations that were in fact teams of rivals. You hear Professor Whalen say that JFK had a team of rivals. Indeed he did, starting with his vice president, Lyndon Johnson. Abraham Lincoln, famously, Doris Kearns Goodwin has written masterfully about this, his team of rivals. Can you imagine today a Democrat president with a bunch of Republicans in his inner circle, or a Republican president with the Democrats in his inner circle in the cabinet? Hard to imagine that, and yet that's what happened during the administration of Abraham Lincoln and JFK. But I still want to talk a bit more about some of these rivals when we come forward with Boston University professor Thomas J. Whalen, author of the book JFK and His Enemies, as we look back on his life and legacy 60 years to the day of his assassination. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on! What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Environmental justice, pollution, and climate. In Los Angeles and across America, people of color are suffering and dying from disproportionate health impacts on a planet that has less than 10 years to prevent irreversible damage. Heat illnesses, respiratory illnesses, water-related illnesses, food system impacts, insect-related diseases, Black maternal health, and mental health effects. As the impacts of climate change mount, millions of vulnerable people, our people, are going to bear the brunt of these extreme environmental events, which will likely lead to forced displacement, loss of cultural identity, and other related risks. These realities are as real as rain. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details about the most progressive multimedia and live events campaign any Black media outlet has ever undertaken to combat the climate catastrophe. Experts, events, empowerment. It's all on the way from unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580. We don't black down. We level up.
Level up, 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 level up,
Hello?
Man, where are you? I thought you were coming.
I can't. I'm in bed with the flu.
The flu? Whoa. Grandma's about to crowd surf. Man, I'll call you back.
Don't get stuck at home with the flu. A flu shot is safe, effective, and you can get it at the same time as your COVID-19 vaccine. A flu shot is the best way to prevent the flu and its potentially serious complications. Don't get flu FOMO. Learn more at getmyflushot.org.
Brought to you by the AMA, CDC, and the Ad Council.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Today is the 60th anniversary of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas, Texas, of course. We spoke earlier in this hour to Geraldo Rivera, who broke to the nation the Zapruder film that so many of you have seen of him being shot 3 times on that fateful day 60 years ago today. We continue our conversation now with Thomas J. Whalen, Associate Professor of Social Science at BU, Boston University. His book is called JFK and His Enemies, A Portrait of Power. Let me ask you right quick before I move to some of these other rivals I want to talk about right quick, whether or not you could imagine, Professor Whalen, in this moment in American history, that any president, can you imagine Joe Biden with a team of rivals or Donald Trump with a team of rivals?
No, I don't think they would even contemplate it, and I think that we're all kind of the worse for it, and that shows us how polarized our country has become in the 21st century.
Nope, I think you're right about that. Couldn't have said it better myself. So I mentioned earlier that one of the things I love about your book is that you remind us that at one point JFK and LBJ were in fact enemies. They were in fact rivals. JFK, of course, I think wisely chose LBJ as his running mate, and the rest, as they say, is history. And again, had LBJ not been there, no way that we would have had, I think, the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, given to your point, the makeup of Congress, of the Senate specifically, and all those Southern Dixiecrat senators. LBJ, of course, being from Texas, knew how to work with them, and so we are forever indebted to LBJ for some seminal legislation that changed the course of this country. But he wouldn't have been there if JFK hadn't gotten past all the drama and chose him as his running mate. That said, I assume that one could regard J. Edgar Hoover as a rival of JFK, even though he was the head of the CIA. And I raise that only because there's so many conspiracy theories 60 years after JFK's assassination that have to do with CIA involvement. I'm not sure you're prepared to go there, but how would you define J. Edgar Hoover as an enemy of JFK?
Well, he was the head of the FBI, so
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there was great tensions between them, but, J. Edgar Hoover had the goods on every politician, Republican and Democrat in Washington, D.C., including John F. Kennedy. he knew that, for example, and he kind of, you see in the documentation, he knew that he was having an affair with the mistress of a mafia don from Chicago, Sam Giancana.
Mm-hmm.
And so JFK wanted to fire him, but he couldn't. And the thing is, though, when the JFK assassination occurred, a lot of people blamed it on Hoover, saying that he was behind it. Well, indirectly, perhaps, because Hoover, from the documentation that's been released, was furious that someone like Lee Harvey Oswald could get so close to the president. He kind of slipped through the cracks of the FBI surveillance. A former Soviet defector comes back with a Russian wife. He's right on, living in Dallas where the president is visiting. Why wasn't he detained? Why wasn't his name put on what was then called the National Security Index for potential enemies that we need to closely keep tabs on? In fact, just a few weeks before the Kennedy assassination, Oswald walks into the FBI office in Dallas and threatens to blow it up if they continue what he said was harassing his wife. And the FBI agent just types up what happened and he files it away. When the assassination occurs, there was no follow-up to it. He was ordered to destroy the document. About 30 agents were disciplined after the Kennedy administration by Hoover. And this was all done quietly. Hoover, if there was a cover-up, it was launched by the FBI and the Warren Commission was to protect the FBI from charges of complete and utter incompetence. So in some ways, JFK was, the victim of bureaucratic incompetence. And we see this, for example, Washington, the Boston Marathon bombing in 2013, 9/11. The FBI does not communicate with the CIA or other national security agencies. They probably could have put it all together beforehand, but because of bureaucratic nonsense and incompetence, they weren't able to. And that might be the unsexy kind of conspiracy theory here.
Nope. To your point, there are all kinds of conspiracy theories all these years later, 60 years later, regarding what the CIA knew or did, what the FBI under Hoover knew or did. Those questions persist. Our remaining moments when we come forward, Professor Thomas J. Whalen, author of the book JFK and His Enemies. You're listening to him right now on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. I was able to speak with Kate Luzio, former banking executive and now owner of Luminary, who partnered with Chase for this tour. She makes it her business to build community for business owners.
Yes, so I was a banker for 20 years before I decided to become an entrepreneur. 7 of those years were actually at JP Morgan Chase. One of the biggest things that I had going into my entrepreneurial journey was a big background in banking.
So what advice are you giving business owners looking for financial backing today?
So Chase brings in so much knowledge and the opportunity to understand what financial tools are out there for business owners to build, grow, and scale their business. A lot of business owners will say, well, I need to get a loan immediately. Well, you wouldn't just lend money to your friend if you didn't know why they needed it. I tell every business owner, you need a business plan, you need financial projections, you need a banker. Because you have to start building a relationship with a banker so that they get comfortable with how you're going to build that business and so that they can eventually support you in different ways.
Makes sense. So visit the Chase Community Center on Crenshaw and Vernon. Meet a banker today. Tell them about your business. I'm Aisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Sounds different. Huh. This is Tavis Smiley.
Got about 2 minutes left for Professor Whalen. Let me close by asking, I think this is the exit question, what there is for each of us to learn 60 years after the assassination of JFK from JFK about how we navigate spaces where we encounter enemies.
Well, we have to apply good old-fashioned rationality, that we can't let our emotions get the better of us. And he proved this time and time again, whether it was regarding, relations with the Soviet Union or civil rights or hammering out a budget with Congress, that, you have to compromise, that, you can't get everything that you want all at once. But, if you are able to reach across the aisle and convince the other one, basically, of your particular argument, that there is a reason behind it, that progress can be made. Maybe not as fast as you'd like, but nevertheless, you're moving forward. And I think that is the great story of JFK. He brought our country forward. As he promised when he was running for president in 1960, he said, let's get America moving again. And I think he did.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say his legacy is 60 years later?
I think his legacy is one of hope. Mm-hmm. That, despite as bad as it can get, and remember, he brought us basically to, out of the worst nuclear crisis of the Cold War, when we were on the eve of destruction. He brought us out of that, and in the process created a better global environment, a world, he said, that he hoped would be made safe for diversity of all people and opinions in politics.
His name is Thomas J. Whalen. He's a associate professor of social science at Boston University. His book is JFK and His Enemies, A Portrait of Power. So delighted to have had him on this program today as we have commemorated in this hour the 60th anniversary of the assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Professor Whalen, good to have you on. Thanks for your time. All the best to you, and happy Thanksgiving, sir.
My pleasure, sir.
Thank you. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Tyreek Wynn. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Civil rights activist Reverend Al Sharpton delivered the eulogy at Monday's funeral